They said he didn't belong in the ring. Not with the way he moved. Not with those heavy legs shaped by years of scaffolding work. But Richard Dunn never asked for permission. He just kept showing up. In a world where boxers were bred in gyms and polished under floodlights, Dunn was still hauling steel by day and fighting by night. No headlines. No sponsors. Just calloused hands and bruised mornings. He trained when he could, with who he could, often alone. His father-in-law, a man with more belief than experience, doubled as his coach. Sparring partners? Too expensive. So he shadowboxed with ghosts and punched through doubt. Before all this, there was rugby. He played hard, just like he lived. Then came the Army, 4th Battalion, Parachute Regiment. He jumped, marched, and led men through cold mud and colder nights. They gave him the Fishmonger's Trophy in '74, not for show, but because he earned it the hard way. Dunn's boxing career didn't begin with a grand entrance. It began quietly, in the corners of local clubs, the kind with peeling paint and leaky roofs. No one looked twice, but he kept fighting, kept climbing, even when it seemed the top of the mountain was meant for others. And one day, just one, he found himself standing across from the most feared man on the planet. How'd he get there? That's the story worth telling. They didn't see a champion when Richard Dunn walked into the ring for the first time. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't talked about. Just a tall, quiet man with a southpaw stance and a stubborn edge. His pro debut came in a small hall in Mayfair, tucked behind the noise of a city that didn't care who won or lost. Dunn won that night, beat Del Phillips in a heavyweight eliminator. But there was no time to celebrate. A few hours later, he was back in the ring for his second fight of the day. This time, he met Danny McLinden, a man on a mission. It didn't last long. McLinden dropped him fast, just like he did to everyone else that day. That might have been the end for most men, but not Dunn. He didn't chase the spotlight. He just kept showing up. In May of '73, he got a shot at Billy Aird, a real test. Dunn went the distance and walked away with the win on points. That victory gave him a crack at a final eliminator. Bunny Johnson stood in his way, and on a rough October night in Manchester, Johnson knocked him out in the 10th. Again, most would have folded, but Dunn didn't. 2 years passed. He worked. He trained. He waited. Then came the rematch. September 1975. Wembley. The stakes were high. British and Commonwealth titles on the line. Same opponent. Same fighter who dropped him 2 years before. This time, Dunn didn't fall. 15 hard rounds. No shortcuts. No easy way out. But when it was over, Richard Dunn had his hands raised. British and Commonwealth champion. No more shadows. No more second looks. The man who never quit had finally arrived. It started with a punch. Not the kind that knocks you out, but the kind that wakes you up. 2 months after Richard Dunn became British and Commonwealth champion, he stood across from Danny McLinden again. The same man who flattened him years earlier. The same man who once made it look easy. But this time, Dunn didn't wait around. He dropped McLinden 3 times in the second round. The referee waved it off. Revenge delivered, quietly, brutally. People started paying attention. April 6th, 1976, Royal Albert Hall. Dunn faced Bernd August of Germany. The European title was on the line. August came to fight, but Dunn didn't let him stick around for long. 3 rounds in, it was over. Another belt. Another step forward. Then came the call. May 24th, 1976. Olympic Hall, Munich. The heavyweight belts of the world, WBC and WBA, were on the table. But so was Muhammad Ali. Dunn didn't flinch. He walked into that ring like he belonged, even if the world whispered otherwise. Ali, faster, sharper, harder touch, moved with ease. Dunn, brave as ever, kept swinging, kept stepping forward, even when the math of the fight leaned hard against him. Ali knocked him down, then again, and again, but there was no mocking, no malice. Ali started picking his punches with care, enough to dazzle the crowd, not enough to truly hurt the man in front of him. Dunn wouldn't quit, so Ali made sure it didn't go too far. At just over 2 minutes in the 5th round, Dunn went down for the last time. The referee stepped in. It was Dunn. Ali, ever the showman, spun a wild punch in the air, urging the officials to call it before things got ugly. That punch, the one Ali didn't throw, became his final knockout. And Richard Dunn? He stood that night not as a loser, but but as the last man to fall at the hands of the greatest. There's a certain silence that follows a storm, the kind that comes when the cheers fade and the lights cut out. For Richard Dunn, that silence came fast. 5 months after standing toe-to-toe with Muhammad Ali, Dunn was back in London, this time facing Joe Bugner. It was supposed to be a fresh start. Instead, it ended in 1 round. Bugner dropped him hard. The belts were gone. So was the moment. Just like that. But Dunn didn't run from it. He never did. One last fight came the following year. September 10th, 1977. Ellis Park, Johannesburg. Kali Noetsa, tough and unforgiving, stood across from him. Dunn fought back like always. No stalling, no hiding. But by round 5, his body had had enough. Another knockout. And this time, Dunn knew. It was over. There was something about him that people remembered. Not the titles. Not even the Ali fight. It was the way he carried himself. Quiet, honest, real. Before he met Ali, the cameras came calling. This Is Your Life surprised him on live TV. Eamon Andrews appeared, the famous Red Book in hand. Dunn smiled, caught off guard, just days before the biggest night of his boxing life. It was a moment that summed him up best. No drama, no act, just Richard Dunn, fighter, father, scaffolder, soldier. A man who went further than most ever expected and never pretended to be anything else. They named a building after him, not because he asked for it, not because he won every fight, but because people remembered the way he stood tall, even when he was knocked down. In 1978, the Richard Dunn Sports Center opened in Bradford, his hometown, his roots. A tribute to the man who once climbed from local halls to the world stage, who fought Ali, who never let the odds talk him out of trying. For decades, the center stood as a local landmark. Kids learned to swim there. Families came and went. His name on the front door, quietly watching over it all. Then time moved on. The doors closed in 2019. Plans were made to tear it down, to name a road after him instead. A quiet switch. But just when it seemed his name might fade from the landscape, historic England stepped in. After a long appeal, the building was saved, granted listed status. Something in its shape, its story, felt worth keeping. And so, Richard Dunn remained. His life after boxing was no fairy tale. A hotel venture went wrong. The money vanished. He packed up with his wife Janet and their 3 kids and moved to Scarborough. Back to scaffolding. Back to hard hats and high winds. Then came the fall, a 40-foot drop from an oil rig in the North Sea. Both legs shattered, a near miss. Still, he kept going. He stayed in Scarborough, gave his time to charity, became honorary president of the local boxing club, spoke to kids who reminded him of himself. Rough edges, big hopes. Now, he lives quietly, dealing with dementia and Alzheimer's. The punches he took over the years, the falls, the long days, they've left their mark. But ask around Scarborough, or Bradford, or anywhere boxing is still spoken with heart, and they'll tell you. Richard Dunn was the real thing. A fighter through and through he never chased fame. He didn't speak in headlines or fight for applause. Richard Dunn just kept going, through wins, losses, setbacks, and silence. He rose from scaffolding sites and army drills to face the greatest boxer who ever lived. He lost titles, fell hard, and still found his way back to work, to family, to the heart of his community. In the end, his story isn't just about boxing. It's about showing up when no one's watching. It's about staying grounded when the world spins fast. And maybe that's why his name still stands. Not on gold plates or grand stages, but in the corners of towns, in the memories of those who saw him fight, and in the quiet pride of a man who never stopped being himself. Richard Dunn didn't need to be loud to be remembered. He just had to be real.